Take a deep breath. Know that you are loved. Take a deep breath. Know that you are loved. Breathe. You've arrived at the Evolving Lover podcast. This transmission is brought to you by the Online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online. Now, here is your host, the funny, thoughtful, and loving Steve Burford. Enjoy.
Today we've got a good friend of mine on the line, Justin Furman. How you doing, Justin?
Hey, I'm doing good, buddy. Good to hear you.
He's co-founder of the Conscious Lifestyle magazine, which is also another magazine on iTunes and Android, and also a website. And he also runs the Flow Consciousness Institute. And he's just been a great brother and a great friend to me over the last years, helping me with mentoring in my own business and as a friend. And he's really got cool guy to speak to when it comes to these things of expanding our consciousness, living in flow, which is incredibly important when it comes to whether we're in a relationship or not, because when we're in flow, when we're single, we might meet someone more serendipitously. We also are happier in our lives because we're just living in flow in general speaking terms, and in that state we don't necessarily need a partner. We need things outside ourselves. And when we are in a relationship in flow, if we can both get in that synchronicity, things just work so much better. And we'll hear about Justin's journey into all this stuff now. So Justin, if you could give us an introduction of who you are and kind of what brings you to teach about flow mastery.
Yeah, who am I? It's a hard question to answer, right? Depends on what level you're talking here. I guess for the purposes of the podcast, it makes more sense to really talk about what I'm doing with my life and how that relates to flow. And I kind of see my mission here at this time, what I'm working towards is really to kind of generally raise the consciousness of the planet and help birth, what I call enlightened structures that allow us to live in flow collectively, and really to have that experience both on an individual level and to apply it on a larger scale at the level of the entire planet, at the level of humanity, and not just living in flow, but also creating self-organizing systems that allow us to thrive on every level, because I think that's really the name of the game. And that's really what's going to help us kind of make the transition through this period of kind of uncertainty and upheaval. And some say cataclysm, but I think it's really kind of an opportunity and really our greatest opportunity for growth that we've had in a long time. And so flow really plugs into that in a sense that it's a new operating system for our consciousness that allows us to live in a more limitless reality. And so flow, as I see it, is really kind of the consciousness level or the consciousness layer of this larger transformation that we're all going through, this larger upgrade and shift that we're all going through as a society. We need to save the planet. We need to work on the environment. We need to upgrade financial systems, government systems, political systems, community systems. I mean, there's so many different layers, and I really see flow as being the consciousness layer, and it's something that allows us to, in a very practical way, live in higher stages and states of consciousness, and to really thrive and to realign with purpose and intuition and all these higher aspects of ourselves that kind of have the self-organizing system within them that allows us to thrive.
Some deep stuff there. So what do you say the difference is between flow and not in flow?
Well, so the flow is really kind of a non-dual teaching on a certain level. And so you can't ever be fully out of flow. However, what the distinction that we make is that there's struggle flow and then there's effortless flow, right? So in a sense, one of the core principles of flow is that there is no right and wrong. You can't do anything wrong. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a reason, even though it may not be obvious what it is on the surface, or it may take time to unfold. But, because of the inherent polarity that exists in this universe, there's a positive aspect and a negative aspect to everything, every experience, every decision. So nothing is ever out of flow. However, certain actions and certain belief structures and certain mental programming and so on and so forth will lead you to a reality of struggle, and others will lead you to a reality of flow and effortlessness. And neither is good or bad or better than the other per se, but we tend to enjoy life a lot more when we're in an effortless flow. But the irony of that whole thing is that the moments of struggle flow are actually are continually portals or opportunities to upshift into effortless flow, because what we teach is that our life is like a feedback mechanism. Our reality is a mirror for our own internal internal psychodynamic structures. And so, in those moments of struggle, you're being given an opportunity to self-reflect on how you're co-creating that experience, and then in that reflection, there's a way for you to upshift into flow as a result.
Yeah, and it's this struggle flow that tends to come up specifically for me, and I think for many others, maybe perhaps the majority of people, when you are in relationship, because you're constantly seeing the mirror in front of you in your partner, and therefore, if that mirror is not clean and you're not working on yourself and finding the ways out of the struggle, you're gonna be constantly like fighting it. Is that something you see in your clients?
I can see that pattern in a larger scale. I think it depends. I can't say that like I see that pattern consistently in clients, for example, because everyone's kind of at a different point in their journey. We tend to attract people that are pretty into personal development. So a lot of times some of these things are not as big of an issue for them. However, with that being said, this is a huge issue in general. That people are externalizing and not taking responsibility for their role in creating their life experience and their circumstance, which of course would go into relationships as well. So like you're saying, right, like people have mirrors in relationship, and instead of, looking within and saying, okay, like what part of me is, being reflected back, they instead externalize. And they say, no, it's you're wrong, and why are you doing that? And everything's about the other person, and that just basically locks you into consistent conflict and struggle, and keeps you from seeing the real wisdom that's there.
And I know you've been with your partner Megan for a number of years now. Is there specific things that you do as a couple to make sure you stay in flow?
Yeah. I mean, one of the core principles of flow is really reorienting around your intuition, and an access point for that is following inspiration and excitement. And so we make space for each other to do that radically. I think a lot of the conflict in relationship comes from unspoken expectations, and also this idea that you both have to agree on everything and you both have to be doing the same things together all the time. And, I see it all the time where people move, like one partner wants to move somewhere or gets a new job somewhere and wants to move across the country. And then the other partner goes, okay, well, I really love being here and love my friend group here, but because you're going there, I'm going to just say no to that and sacrifice all of that. And then, move where you want to go, or, do whatever you want to do to support you. And it's like, there's this unspoken thing in relationship. There's this belief that we all have to be on the same page all the time, doing the same thing together all the time. And it's like, actually that's a limiting belief, and it's not true. And it's usually based on like fear and insecurity and jealousy, because people aren't comfortable either doing long distance or giving their partners freedom to express and explore themselves. And I'm not necessarily suggesting like that's going to lead to a polyamorous relationship or an open relationship or whatever. But I mean, literally just on like a meta context level for the relationship in whatever form that takes. And so Megan and I have really been very open and accepting of each other's excitement and inspiration and passion and wherever that wanted to go and however that wanted to unfold. So there's been parts of our relationship where we've been apart and doing long distance for a long time because her excitement was to go get a master's degree and in San Diego, and I was inspired to stay in Santa Barbara, and I didn't want to go to San Diego, and I was doing different things in my life. I was more focused on entrepreneurship. And so we were, apart for a long time, and some couples couldn't fathom that because to them, the most important thing is sharing, space and being in the same place all the time. And so, that has allowed us to really stay together unmarried for 10 years and navigate multiple businesses and, lots of long distance because we hold our highest value as freedom in our relationship and growth and in our relationship context.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because you run the Conscious Lifestyle magazine with her, and I've seen you together, and you're always allowing that flow to be with each other, and that's the thing to remember when you were saying about the non-duality aspects. Basically, this flow requires trust of the universe, trust of your partner, trust of everything around you that is working out for you, whatever it is that you're doing. That's really, really important. So what are some things some of the listeners can do to perhaps step more into their own flow, whether they are single or in a relationship, so they can live in this effortless flow that you speak about?
This transmission is brought to you by the Online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Yeah. So there's really two aspects to getting in flow, two core aspects. If we look at it at like a high level, we call it inner flow and outer flow. And inner flow is really everything that's going on inside your consciousness, that's going on inside your mind, your internal experience of reality specifically. And that has to do with really how you're programmed at the deepest levels, your perception, specifically your belief structures, your emotional state, and so on. And the goal of internal flow is really to reprogram you to be limitless. And you do that by doing an inventory of your limiting beliefs, your negative emotional patterns, and your trauma, and letting that go, and instead replacing it with an upshifting into what we call limitless belief structures or unlimited belief structures, and finding emotional freedom and so on and so forth, because you basically want to reprogram yourself to see the world in a way that engenders flow and makes you limitless. And so that's a really important component of it. We say that that's about 60% of getting into flow, because if you have belief structures at the deepest levels of your consciousness that are fighting flow, no matter what you do to get in flow physically and with your actions and decisions and so on, there's going to be this internal kind of tug of war that you're working against yourself. So it's really, really important to kind of tend the soil of your consciousness and make sure that at the deepest levels you are in alignment with flow. But beyond that, outer flow is really about what you're doing in the world, what actions you're taking, how you're showing up, what decisions you're making, and so on and so forth. That's more action oriented. That is how you calibrate to flow in any given moment, right? So now you have this deeper layer of inner flow that you've cultivated. Now, what do you actually do in your day-to-day life to stay in flow and to know how to navigate any situation or challenge that comes up, so that you know what the decision is to make to get into flow? And outer flow, there's 7 core principles that we teach that kind of allow you to know what to do in any given moment. But to kind of distill that down to something actionable, there's a couple primary shifts that go into that. And one of the really big ones that I touched on a little bit already was reorientation around intuition, specifically around excitement, around inspiration, which are types of intuition. These are ways that intuition shows up, because developing intuitional capacity, as you know, is a big thing. It's like training for the Olympics on a certain level to really go as far as you can. But there's really easy access points, like, for example, inspiration and excitement, that are sensations that we all have, or feelings that we all have from time to time, that we can start to recognize are cues and access points to tap into flow. So I think a really easy thing that people can do is to start to notice when they're feeling inspired, and or search for inspiration, or notice when they're feeling excited about something, and or actively search for what they're excited about, and start to do those things regularly. Because in doing those things, you start to follow your intuition, you start to align with purpose, you start to align with your passion, and that starts to naturally open up flow. And so when you stack that on top of this deeper inner work that I know you've been doing for a long time, and so have I, is that's a really potent combination. So I would encourage people to go within, start excavating on that level, and then to also really start to pay attention to how they're feeling and how intuition shows up in their life, and to really, follow that as their main compass as they go about things.
And can flow help bring more money into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, flow is a universal key. So flow is an operating system, right? And on an operating system, you might have apps for finance, you might have Google Maps, you might have a dating app, you know what I mean? You might have a meditation app. I mean, you get everything. So flow touches every area of your life. It literally works its way into everything, whether that's your finances, your wealth, your business, your relationships, your spirituality, and so on and so forth. It's basically like an accelerator or an amplifier for all those things. And so if you want to make more money and that would further your purpose and your passion, then absolutely. And in most cases it would. Money is just energy. And so it's a reflection of how much energy you're holding in your capacity and how much value you're offering. So flow will definitely accelerate that.
What if someone's listening and they're thinking, yeah, this sounds good, but it also sounds a bit like hippie crack, and if my wife or partner or whoever is with me hears that I'm going to go into flow and not work hard like Gary Vaynerchuk says, or whoever else, hustle your ass off, and he does also say other good things in terms of like do what you love, but often hard work is what society and many other people say is the only really way of having success in this world, and therefore having like a fulfilled family life that you can support everyone in your family if you're trying to grow a family. What might you say to them?
I would say, which flavor of crack do you prefer, hippie crack or hustle crack? It's really your choice. Pick your poison. No, but in all seriousness, so there's I think in that question, which is a great question because it's a devil's advocate question, which really kind of gets to the meat of it. And there's a couple unspoken assumptions which I'll talk about. But before I get to that, like flow, as we teach it, flow consciousness. It can sound kind of ethereal and woo-woo if you're hypersensitive to that kind of stuff. However, what we do is very much based on research into a number of different fields, from quantum physics to psychoneurobiology to neuroscience, and all kinds of stuff in between that, all kinds of different branches of psychology and so on. And we're really serious about research and, making sure that what we teach and what we talk about is based on, not just conjecture, but either empirical evidence or actual scientific research. And we have a number of PhD advisors that are good friends, and kind of we check in with them regularly to make sure that the foundational principles that we're basing this work on are sound with what they know and what we also know from, kind of a more spiritual background that we come from. But beyond that, the idea that you don't work hard when you're in flow is that in and of itself is kind of a misnomer. So the reframe around it is that when you get into flow, it's not that you stop doing work. It's that you do work that you want to be doing. You do work that feels like play. You do work that is the most effortless kind of work for you. So for example, if you looked at how I spend a lot of my day, you'd be like, you're working a lot of your day. But the thing is that when I survey my life and go, what, I could be doing anything. Like I have financial freedom. I live in the ideal place that I want to live. Like I have the life I want to have. I literally have my dream life. I could be doing anything I want right now. And I'm choosing to do this because this is how I want to spend my time. And this is what's fun for me. And this is what's exciting for me right now. And when it's not, I stop and I might go travel, or I might go to the beach, or whatever I do. But the point is that it's not that I don't work. It's that I align myself with the work that is a hell yes for me, that is in flow for me, that is effortless for me. And that's me. Some people may choose to go meditate in the hills for 10 years and be a monk. And other people may, spend 6 months of the year on the beach because that's their choice. But I guarantee you that most of these people that we see that are really hyper successful, like for example, we were at a talk with Jeff Bezos at Summit a couple weeks ago, and he said that he loves doing what he's doing, and I'm sure he works way more than most people do in their lives, but he's choosing to do what he wants to do. You could say the same thing about Branson. You could say the same thing about Oprah, or any of these people that really are hyper successful, is that they got to that place in large part because they align themselves with flow and they do work to them that they like. So the idea that you don't do work when you're in flow is incorrect. However, it's different than the kind of work that Vaynerchuk or a lot of people preach and say that you need to do, which is hustle and grind work, which is like get shit done, force yourself to do it, sacrifice now for later gains, work, 80 hours. It's like, I don't work 80-hour weeks. I work way less than that. But I get exponential results because I'm doing it in flow, and flow is the path of least resistance and highest leverage. So you get more out of doing less work that you love while you're in flow. So in that sense, it's never going to have you just, become a non-functioning member of society. If anything, it reorients you to be and not serve in the highest capacity and your highest genius, which is the highest likelihood of success for you.
Yeah. And I do like Gary Vaynerchuk, and he does. He lives in flow, like you say. Bezos and Branson do. He lives in his flow, but he's educating from his flow. So he's like, okay, I ate shit for 10 years. You eat shit for 10 years if you want to be like me. But you don't have to be like him. You can be like you. And he does say that as well, to be honest, to be fair to him. So, for me on the flow thing, I think it's taken me years, and I've been through some of your program. You sent it to me when I was having a bit of a personal crisis a few years back. And it's a very deep program. For the way I see flow, and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier, is that like we're all these energy beings, and there's this cosmos around us that has infinite intelligence that is, and the underlying belief that you need to have for flow to really work is that the universe is benevolent. And that's hard to believe in this world when you see so much news around and so many people dying and all this stuff. But you kind of have to put that to one side and say the universe is benevolent, and whatever happens for me is for the highest good. Once you've cleared out your own personal energy system, as you said earlier, if you've still got those belief systems, if you still got those stuck energy patterns in your body, you won't be able to live in the effortless flow. And so I think your program is about clearing yourself out so that you can open up to the vastness and the possibilities of your true potential and true playfulness and true effortless flow, so that we can create what you were saying at the beginning, this higher consciousness world. Is that a good snapshot of what flow is?
We interrupt this podcast to tell you to head over to rawattraction.com to get our premium subscription. Raw Attraction, for the evolving lover. Visit rawattraction.com now. Thank you for your support. We love you.
Yeah, I'd say that's getting pretty close. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that the core thing is like understanding that, that everything in this universe and really in reality is in a state of evolution constantly, and everything is designed at a most fundamental level, whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe in a creator or not, doesn't matter. Like the inherent if you look at things through a lens of quantum physics or evolutionary biology or whatever, like it's so clear that everything is designed to thrive. When you take nature, when you remove humans from the equation, you look at nature as an ecosystem in and of itself, animals, the plants, and so on, everything's in perfect harmony and it's thriving all the time. And it's like that anywhere that humans haven't intervened. Literally, everything is thriving because that is the way that engenders life to exist in the first place. And so humans, however, we're able to kind of get out of sync with this because of our conscious, rational minds that allow us to have expanded abilities on one hand, but also can really get us into a bind by taking us out of alignment with our intuition or our instinct, which is how plants and animals function and thrive, that they're in perfect sync with their intuition, this inherent like evolutionary force that's keeping everything thriving all the time. But we have the option of whether or not we decide to live in alignment with that. And so unfortunately, we haven't been choosing it collectively. But as we come back into that and choose that more and more, we start to get back into that rhythm of flow and effortlessness and abundance and so on and so forth that we see in the natural world. And so I think flow is really about coming back into alignment with that. So it's not so much a process of adding, it's a process of subtracting everything that's blocking you from that and really letting go of all the false beliefs and perceptions that we've been taught by society and so on, and taught about the way that things have to be, and really come back into alignment with what the fundamental nature of reality is. Because when we do that, we've got everything that we need to thrive within us already. And it's just really about letting that out and expressing it fully.
What do you think a world looks like when the vast majority is in flow, like effortless flow?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that before. I've thought about it, but no one's ever asked me.
Good.
Yeah. So I see it really as kind of a renaissance in our society where there's very little. So there's no war. It's not to say that there wouldn't be conflict, but it would be more of like, interpersonal discussion and just kind of generally beneficial, kind of not opposition, but, there needs to be some, friction for things to grow and expand, right? So there's always this kind of creative tension that's going on. So, between people, there's discussions on what's the way forward and so on and so forth, but there's no like large scale war or people killing each other or conflict or anything like that. It's more of like creative tension, like what's the best way, for example, to organize society so that everyone thrives, or what do we do with people that, have extreme psychological issues or stuff like this. So it's just like kind of more philosophical and existential questions about how we operate, but not really like, radical fundamentalist religious jihad or war or genocide or whatever that is that's going on in the world right now, or governmental crisis. So there's none of that. It's really just about what's the best way for us to grow and continue to expand and thrive. And the society has really reoriented itself around purpose. So instead of the current system we have where we basically are teaching people how to operate in a giant machine that's solely designed for profit in a reality where everyone's living in flow at the highest level, what we've reorganized around is purpose and passion. So the most important thing as a society is for people to figure out what their genius is, what their purpose is, what they most love doing, and then to do that. Because we've realized as a society then that when people do that, they naturally come up with the solutions and the things that we need to really thrive on a collective level. So we've realized that encoded within each person is a puzzle piece that creates this beautiful mosaic, the most incredible, beautiful, image and puzzle in society, that when everything's clicked together. So basically, everyone's constantly plugging into their purpose and passion. And so everyone's happy, everyone's thriving, everyone's really in a good spot in their life and living from that place constantly. So we're seeing solutions to the world's biggest problems coming forward. We're seeing really elegant, innovative systems coming forward that are integrating the best of the natural world into technology, so that we really have, all the gifts that technology can bring us without any of the negative downsides, and all of the gifts that nature can bring us, but we're able to expand on that. And we're really living for the first time in a truly globally integrated, harmonious, peaceful society where we're evolving as a collective organism instead of different people at different spaces and all the conflict that comes along with that. So I think it's really an era where we move we start to move out of poverty, out of struggle and suffering, out of the need, to destroy the planet and to rape and pillage and all these other things that we're doing, and come into this kind of collective synergy where we're all able to really thrive. And I really like Barbara Marx Hubbard's work and Dwayne Elgin's work in describing kind of what this end state will look like. They do a really good job. So if anybody's interested in what a really enlightened society could look like, I would highly recommend checking out what they've put forward and kind of their vision for that, because I think flow is a big piece in connecting and upshifting us into that.
Yeah, I definitely think flow is a big piece. I think, which is why you're doing your work. And for me, the sexuality education and love education is a huge piece, because without true knowledge of our sexuality and not using it this kind of hidden, dirty tool to gain power over others, as it's being seen in Hollywood and all these other places, these guys who are being outed as rapists and molesters, and there's all this hidden stuff because we've got no education about sexuality. And if we don't get educated about like the true meaning of tantra and all these other aspects of sacred sexuality, we're going to be struggling to get into that flow state. Is kind of my perspective.
Yeah, everything needs to come, every aspect, sexuality, relationships. Yeah, these all need to come above board, and they need to, not be taboo, and there needs to not be any trauma and wounding collectively and individually there. So for sure, I think in a flow-based society, we'd have people that's their passion, like you, to teach about that, which you're already doing, which is awesome. Even in the matrix, I'm using air quotes here, and come forth and really, hold space for that and create ways for that to be, brought into our educational system in a way that, really serves everybody, because that's for sure if we were going to redesign things to be ideal and thrive for everybody, it would absolutely need to be an, education about, what I would call enlightened sexuality, and really understanding that layer of ourselves for sure. That's foundational.
Yeah, foundational for sure. I wouldn't say I was particularly, well, I guess I am teaching it, but I would say I'm the bridge. And yeah, the technology's coming in. You and I speak about it quite a lot, of AI and blockchain technology, of what that could do to education. Even watching, I think you've seen the film Blade Runner 2049. That's not really a lookout for the utopian society or flow society, but it does speak to some of the technology that might come about in terms of educational AI technology that is not that far away. I don't know, minimum 5 years. I don't know, something like that. 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, we're going to see stuff, pretty interesting things. It's already happening, but it's really going to hit, mass adoption in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yeah, the I don't want to say her name because she'll end up speaking to me in my room. The Amazon thing that you can buy, but she will become very intelligent. And there's a AI on the blockchain that you and I were looking at, which could be very big, a decentralized one. And I think the technology that's rising is rising up out of these flow states. Are certain these entrepreneurs that are changing things. I think the Bible got it slightly wrong when they said the meek will inherit the earth. It's the geek that will inherit the earth. The geek and the spiritual. I don't know if that was on the cards when Earth was born, but it's happening. Spiritual geeks, everyone.
Spiritual geeks will rule the world. Yeah, right.
So yeah, any further tips on, say, someone who's single and they are wanting to get into like a relationship, but they haven't attracted the right partner. Does this happen a lot with your clients? If is this something you tell them? Um, yeah, words on that
Yeah.
one.
I mean, it's the cool thing about the principles of flow is that they're really universal. So if it's your intention to, be in a relationship and find a partner that is really a great match for you on a lot of different levels and really part of, your overall evolution, which I think is kind of the goal for any experience we have, is that is to kind of to do that, to continue to follow your intuition, because if that's truly something that will serve your growth and your expansion, in doing that, you will call in the partner that's the exact right person for you to have that experience with in the moment. And so another layer of flow, like we talked about, is, is that it's non-dual. And so that in whatever you're experiencing, there is wisdom in that experience. And so, if you're with a partner that is not compatible, or if you've been dating and you haven't found someone that's a good match, or maybe you've, dabbled here and there, but there's been issues, like, well, what are the issues? And what are the patterns that you're seeing in your relationships now? Because the goal, like, we're always focused on what the thing that we want, but there's interesting and important data that's being reflected back to us by the people that we're interacting with now and in the relationships we're having now. And, whether those are great relationships or they're so-so relationships. And so I think self-reflecting about why, if you're in a relationship with someone who's not your highest excitement and is not resonating with you and you want something better, what aspects in this relationship are being reflected back to you? What aspects of yourself that maybe are triggering you, right? Because in that trigger, there's some deeper emotion or some deeper limiting belief there that is being activated within you. And typically that's what's calling in that person. That's the resonance that's calling in that person if that person's triggering it. And so by reflecting on what that is and getting clear on it, maybe it's a fear that you can't trust other people. And so you're calling in partners who don't really trust you. And that's a big issue for you in relationships, is trust. Or maybe, the person's reflecting back to you a deep wound that you don't believe you're worthy of love at the deepest levels. And so, that person is reflecting that back on some wavelength. So really by just kind of self-reflecting and going well, what is this person triggering within me? What am I making these things mean about myself? What must I believe is true to be calling in this type of person into my relationship, into my world? You will start to understand how you're co-creating that. And then you can kind of examine those things. Can you not trust others? Or is that just kind of an old outdated paradigm? Are you really unworthy of love, and so on and so forth? And as you shift out of those beliefs, you shift your entire perception, you shift your entire reality. You show up differently, you act differently, you think differently, and therefore it shoots you on a different trajectory through time and space. And you will start to meet people that are in alignment with the new belief structures that you have and the new way you're looking at reality. And so, it's easy to say, just do this one thing and you'll find your dream partner. But the truth is that you'll find your dream partner when you come into alignment with your dream self, in the sense that when you start to express who you really are and start to open up into flow, that's when you'll start to call in a partner who can meet you on that wavelength. And so going within and checking in about what's actually happening now is really important, and reflecting about that. And then also continuing to align with your intuition, your inspiration, your excitement, and really letting those be your compass radically for moving forward, and really for every choice and decision that you have to make, and not just the big ones, because it's all the micro decisions that we make unconsciously throughout the day that have the biggest choice on our life, biggest impact on our life. And so by shifting into that reality of making choices around based around your intuition, your inspiration, your excitement consistently, you will bring yourself into alignment with the person who's the right person for you in that moment, which will be the stepping stone to a better relationship in the future, if that's what's in your cards, or maybe this will be the one for you. So,
Yeah, the last thoughts really a question around the whole act of wanting. For me, actually, it's only been in the last year where I've really eliminated wanting from my life. I think I read recently something like the Buddha said, wanting or desiring is the devil or something akin to that. It's poison. Somehow I've managed to eliminate wanting anything, whether it's a partner, whether it's money, whether it's more visitors to Raw Attraction or whatever it is. How important do you think that is when it comes to flow, and perhaps linking that to wanting a partner or not? Because for me, I think I'm more in flow when I don't want anything.
Yeah, so great question. And it's, flow is a paradox. So if you look at the Tao Te Ching, the classic Taoist text, the whole book is a paradox. And there's a lot of interpretations about what it is and what it isn't and what the meaning is. And I think a lot of people like to really, take it into these existential kind of extremes. But the truth is that what it's telling us is that everything is in the singularity. Everything is in the paradox, that we live in a paradox, right? And so there's it, and we live in polarity, really. And so the flow is the integration point between the two ends of the spectrum. It's the integration of the polarity. So at that integration point, you have acceptance and desire, right, on two ends of the spectrum, right? And flow is dancing with both of them at the same time. So in that sense, I think that the Buddhist perspective has swung overly far into the direction of acceptance to the point where like you kind of lose the self completely. Like that's the goal of a lot of Eastern traditions, is to lose the personality, lose the ego, lose the self completely, and merge back into pure awareness with the divine, and dissolve the self completely and merge back into a collective experience, or a complete, reemergence, remerging with God, or whatever their conception is, right? And so that's one end of the pendulum, and that's a very extreme end of the pendulum. On the other side, you have like a Western spiritual tradition, which says, no. Life is, the meditation is life. Life, how you live is the meditation. It's not about, running away into a monastery and trying to transcend these higher planes. And so in that sense, the Western path, or, I'm using air quotes, a positive path versus a negative path of dissolution, or yin path of dissolution, or versus a positive path, a yang path of desire, is, really like we become enlightened through our continual evolution and our desires and our excitement and our intuition and so on and so forth. So I think flow is the integration of both of those. So in that sense, acceptance is important, in that acceptance is the path of least resistance. If you're resisting something that's happening in your life, you cannot be in effortless flow around it, because you're resisting the thing, and resistance is counter to the idea of flow. It's the polarity of flow. And so, you have to be in acceptance to really be in flow. But acceptance also means accepting that you have a desire. If you're truly practicing radical acceptance, it's not just a complete letting go. It's a radical acceptance. So if you have a desire in a given moment that's in alignment with your intuition, that you have to accept the reality of that as well, and accept that you desire to act on it. That in desire, we're wanting to act. So the distinction that allows you to stay in flow with it is that when most people have a desire, it consumes them and they get really agitated. And if they don't get it, there becomes this gap, and then they get all worked up about it, and then they fall out of acceptance. But you can ride that edge of radical acceptance in every moment, where even in having the desire, you don't get attached to it. You have the desire, it makes you excited if it's in alignment with your intuition, and you can stay in that place of sacred neutrality around it as you go about fulfilling whatever the desire is, or working towards it. Because I believe that desire or want, for example, is part of the evolutionary impulse that allows us to evolve and move forward. Because if we were literally just in radical acceptance, we would have stayed in the Garden of Eden, and that would have been that. Because, or whatever your religion dictates is the pre-modern civilization mythology. But we would have just stayed there, would have stayed living as, tribal hunter and gatherers, because that is what acceptance would have been, is never evolving. We wouldn't even have developed tools. So there is this dynamic tension between acceptance and desire and want. And I think that the important point is to not let desire take you out of that sacred place of happiness and joy and peace, and being in the present moment, but to continually ride that as you go about fulfilling whatever your desires are, and really realigning desires with intuition and excitement, versus just wanting to get our needs met in terms of what society tells us is right. So when you do that and you're in that integration point, that's when you're really able to stay in flow, balance both of those polarities, and not have to surrender acceptance or desire, and maintain both of them.
Yeah, I think I'm lying to myself when I say I don't want anything, because clearly I think there's micro wants which keep you in flow. I think I was alluding to macro wants, where obviously I want there's micro events during a day, or little things like I have a desire to connect with a certain friend, or I don't know, I want to go out for a walk, or I want to eat a specific food.
Right.
Like those keep you in the flow. Then there's these macro things where if I don't have X amount of money or X amount of visitors to my site, or I don't know, a girlfriend that's this age and whatever, those things keep you out of flow. Is there a difference?
Yeah, so that's a condition, right? So just to get technical, that's a condition, right? If I don't have that thing, then I won't be this. Whereas it's possible to not have the thing. Like usually it's like, if I don't have the girlfriend, I won't be happy. If I don't have the business, I won't be fulfilled, or I won't have money, or I won't be happy, right? So those are the conditions. But those are just arbitrary conditions that we set up. Whereas on the other side of the coin, you can be happy in going about it, right? Like I want to have a partner that I love and that can meet me on all these different levels of consciousness, and I'm still happy in where I'm at now. And so you're going about that journey in actualizing that want from a place of joy and acceptance versus a place of lack and not being enough or whatever.
I think the thing for me on this final, I mean, we could speak to this for ages, but trying to wrap up somehow. I want to wrap up. Just a joke there. So the point on this is actually just to do with I think what they're getting at is the language. And there's a book I read called Conscious Language. I think Robert Tennyson Stevens, very good book, and he talks about eliminating certain words. I think want is one of them, and he starts to use the word claim. So when you claim something, it's already yours. So like, I claim this money to be mine. I claim certain whatever you want to claim. So those language reference points are very strong in our subconscious and can really carve out reality. And if we are using the word want, we are perpetuating this loop of wanting for the macro things.
Totally. Yeah, there's an unconscious assumption, when there's an unconscious implied sentiment that when you want something, you do not yet have it. And so, language kind of reveals these things to us if we really dial into it. And yeah, absolutely. So I totally agree. Language is a major access point to what we would say inner flow, right? Because your language, for example, in the case of wanting, right, there's this unconscious assumption that in wanting something, you're implying that you don't have it, right? Like the implications of wanting something is like you want things that you don't have. So when you say, I want this thing, what you're unconsciously affirming to yourself is that you don't have the thing. Whereas you want to unconsciously affirm to yourself that the thing is coming, or that you've already got it, or you're claiming it, or, like if you want a girlfriend, you can tell yourself like, the girlfriend that my dream partner is on her way. You know what I mean? Where the unconscious assumption is that it's happening already, right? There's a lot of ways to play with language and to really do that. And NLP is really kind of the art and science of that taken to an extreme. And it's, language is an awesome access point to the inner flow, and to be able to kind of reprogram yourself through language just by what you're speaking every day versus, actually going in there and messing with things. You can just unconsciously and consciously be affirming to yourself realities that you want, and that shifts your unconscious in that direction over time, which is a really powerful way to do it.
Well, I think this must have whet people's appetites to learn more, I do recommend that Conscious Language book. I think you can find it on the Kindle if you search Conscious Language on Amazon. But also recommend further looking into Justin's work. Justin, where can people find out more about your work?
Yeah, thanks. Flowconsciousnessinstitute.com is a great place to kind of get info on everything related to flow consciousness and what we're doing, and find out about the different ways and trainings that we offer, and how you can play with flow if that is in your excitement. And Flow Mastery is our core training, and we're about to launch another round of that coming up here in 2018. So if you're interested, check it out at flow-mastery.com. And I know you mentioned the magazine a couple times, and so consciouslifestylemag.com too. Tons and tons of information there for free, all about what Steve and I have been jamming about. Lots of stuff about sexuality, relationships, and consciousness. So give it a check.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking out Justin's work. He's going to be up to great things. He is now, and he will be in the future. So please do check out his work. Thanks, Justin, for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Likewise, Steve. Thanks so much.
This transmission is brought to you by the Online University of Love and Sexuality. We would love you to receive all of our podcasts and videos at www.uls.online.